Hey, you guys, I am so excited to be back on the podcast. It has been a minute. We took a long Christmas break, kind of like our long winter's nap that, I don't know, it's still winter, right, Annie? But it's,
Very much so. Yes.
I feel like Christmas went way too fast. We didn't get quite enough of a nap time that I felt like was needed.
Hmm.
But I'm excited to be back. We've been doing a lot of planning for the year, a lot of like reflecting on last year and just things that worked, things that didn't. And I don't know. I'm just excited to be back. How about you, Annie?
Yep. Same. It's going to be a good year. We had a big old long meeting about what the year looks like and things that we want to do. And I think it was good. It felt productive and manageable.
Hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
not too big, but like the things that mattered. I feel like we really were intentional about making sure that our time was being spent on things that we think actually matter, you know?
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Because I think like something that's easy to forget. I know I do this with like the people I listen to. Like you kind of forget like what's going on in the background.
Hmm.
And like in the background for us, in the background for us is a lot of homeschooling, a lot of
Hmm.
cooking, a lot of like running around and activities and all the things. But we just do this on the side and it's really awesome. But we do always have to like, just make sure we're keeping everything in its proper boundaries because otherwise, I don't know, our kids aren't going to know their
Yeah,
multiplication facts.
that's right. Which is why we get up at 5 in the morning to record these.
Exactly.
Oh
Exactly.
man.
We're trying to do a bit of like a little bit of an addition this season. We'll see if it works. If
Hmm.
you're hearing this podcast and you're like, "Wait, what? I don't see it on YouTube." We're trying to put it on YouTube. We're going to see how that goes. If
Yep.
if we try to load it up and it's like, "Okay, this is bad." It was a bit of a challenge getting ready. I will say this morning because I'm like, "Oh, I had to like put clothes on, like real
Yeah.
clothes, not my robe." So,
Yep.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't have to, but I don't know. I don't
And
really want.
our spaces had to
Yeah.
be somewhat picked up, or at least, in my case, piles shoved to the side. So
Yeah. There's creative cropping going on
that's
for
right.
the YouTube version of this, so just keep that in mind.
I
I'm in a corner like with like this corner of my schoolroom which is clean and it has kind of a presentable background, so it's like, okay, that'll work, but
Yep.
we're not going to pan the camera in any way, shape, or form.
No. Nope.
No. So today I wanted to go back and sorry. I wanted to go back because I think that we're always like so anxious to get onto the next thing, get onto the next thing, get onto the next thing. But I feel like something that we really lack in our culture and in our society is just kind of like sitting in the moment and even just like reflecting on like the good things. One thing that I do, and I've done this probably for like 4 or 5 years now, is I always like to make like New Year's goals. I call them goals. I don't really know the difference between a resolution and a goal, but I do make New Year's goals all the time. So I'll split it up into like personal things that are just about me, and then our family, things that like apply to the whole house, and that includes like home projects and things like that. And then business goals as well.
Mhm.
But before I do any of that, I feel like I can't do any of that until I look back and like make a list of it's so creative, but it's just called like the 2023 good list or the
Mhm.
2022 good list. And usually it helps me to look at my planner and remember everything that we did for the year. I kind of use it as like a bit of a diary. And I go through and I just have a journal where I record my goals and things, and I just make a list of all the good things from the year. And I just think it's so important because like we just are so anxious to get on to the next thing. And with our families, like the season that our kids are in, like, oh, I can't wait until we're done with this. I can't wait until we've, accomplished this or accomplished that. But at the same time, we're just kind of like, I don't know, we're just rushing onto the next thing. And I don't know. I just think it's a good practice
It
to
is.
just pause and reflect on really what it is like God's provision, God's blessing. I mean, like this year, I wrote down, my mom has been dealing with cancer for the last like year and a half, and this in 2023, as of like July 3rd, I think,
Mhm.
um, she's cancer free. Like you have to write
Mhm.
these things down because
Yep.
otherwise you just go on to the next thing, and you're like, okay, that was really, really hard, but it's just good, I think, to like pause and praise the Lord, like for what he has done. So,
Mhm.
um, I don't know if you do anything like that, but, or
I
if you have thoughts
do.
on that. Do
I
you?
do. Well, I do that exact thing because you
Are you
told me about
serious?
it yeah, because you told me about it.
Oh,
Like, I want to say it was probably, I think this is my third year doing, or fourth year, maybe. You told me about it. And I just thought that's such a good idea because it is so easy to forget the things that were good, especially when you have a year that maybe did feel somewhat harder. And
mhm.
so those things always stick out, right? Like they're always easy to remember the tough things that you go through. Or maybe like you cross over from December to January and it's just still hard. Like nothing really changed. Life is still difficult in these particular areas. And you're right. Like it makes it's just you start the year with like a very thankful heart for the things that were great in that year, and there's always good things
Mhm.
even in the midst of the struggles. I always write on mine, I'm sure you do too, but I always write like celebrated another year of marriage, like the things that
Yes.
feel like, oh, that happens every year, whatever. But for some people it doesn't. For some people, they've been married to somebody that you know they might be believers or whatever, but their marriage ended and they never thought that that would ever happen to them, and I don't know, I just feel like I put those things, I put another birthday, like all of my kids'
Hmm.
birthdays, like those are all such wonderful and they're worth celebrating. We got another year together, and so yeah, I've done it since you told me about it about 3 or 4 years ago. And yeah, it's kind of one of my favorite things to just look back on the year. And I don't know,
Hmm.
trips that you take, or it doesn't have to be like big, huge milestones, but things that made you smile, that,
Hmm.
brought joy to your family. Or so yes, I do the same thing.
Visits, I like to write down if somebody comes to visit, because I don't
Yeah.
know, I just always think it's like such a special thing to like spend that kind of like quality time, or like, I don't know, just like something you learned, right? Or
Yep.
something that one of your kids accomplished, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, how many books you read. I think that's fun to record. So
Yep.
definitely a good practice. So we're kind of doing that a little bit in today's episode. We're just kind of taking a minute to look back over the year on our work at Learning Well Journal, and to just like reflect on the themes that we chose, some of our favorite topics that we covered in each of those
Mhm.
issues. And I don't know, just some of the cool things that we did in together, and got to share with all of you guys. And yeah, and some of the things we're looking forward to in the new year. So we're going to
Yeah.
start with spring. We're going to go all the way back to, we just actually, as of this recording, last night, I just sent to the printer the 2024 spring issue. And we were just talking before we hit record that it's just, we say this, I know you guys are like, okay, we get it. But no, seriously, like this one is so pretty. Like there's just so many, and it's more than just beautiful to look at. Like
Hmm.
words that these women put together, I'm just like, I don't know, just blessed by them sharing their gifts with us, and
Hmm.
all of you guys. So I think it's going to be a really good one. So we're going to wind back the clock to spring of 2023. We had this cute little toad on the cover, which was kind of fun. And this one was about resourcefulness. And the scripture that we picked was, one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. Luke 16:10. Scripture is just, it just covers everything, right? Like anything that you
Yeah.
could think of, there's a scripture for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's just obviously just such knowledge in it. So this one was all about resourcefulness. So whether you have like the scripture is saying, right? Like whether you have a lot or whether you have a little, it's
Mm-hmm.
always a good virtue to be resourceful. So even if you have $1 million to spare, it still doesn't permit you to just be wasteful and just kind of like not be attentive to what God has given you. So like, right? Like just do good with what God has given you no matter how much or how little. So it was a fun article. There was lots of good wisdom inside. But what was your favorite topic or article from the issue?
Well, I had a couple. Um, the first one, I really enjoyed your article on how to shop secondhand.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought it was so fun, and I thought it gave such good advice for, for those of us that like are wanting to maybe change things up in a room, or I think it can be kind of overwhelming because like it's just expensive, right? It's super expensive to change out decor or maybe with the seasons if you're wanting to change something up. Uh I I think it can be kind of overwhelming. And I thought there were such good tips in this of how to just rearrange and buy things that are really truly not or can be inexpensive to change things up. And so I really loved that one. It's not something that I would say that I am like practiced at thrifting. I like thrifting, but I don't know that like when I go into a thrift store, I can easily get overwhelmed instead of like
Mm-hmm.
being really I feel like your article gave some really good points of like look for these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I have taken that stuff and have as I've gone into thrift stores since then, have been really intentional about the things that I look for. Um, yeah, so I really enjoyed that one, um, and felt like it helped in that way. And then my other one that I really loved was I don't think were we doing the podcast yet when this. I don't think
No,
we were because it started in the summer, right? Or after summer.
we started I think with the fall issue, like we with the fall
Okay.
23 issue. We kicked
Okay.
off like in
So we
August.
we haven't talked about this one. It's just that we've talked about so many of Hannah's articles, but I
Yeah.
loved I loved her article. It's called Worry Not, and I just it
Hmm.
it just resonated with me. Any kind of, sermon or article or whatever on worry always does because it's just a huge issue for me.
Hmm.
But I loved it. I thought it was so it's always applicable, but in a year or just the current time that we're in where things do feel really just uncertain and maybe several people are dealing with the tightening up of funds and finances because of inflation and the other things that are going on. I just found it really so uh comforting, I guess, her words. And I thought I would just read this very small little part that she wrote at the end here, um, where she says, when we let worry or fear consume our thoughts, it ultimately begins to consume our lives. We have the opportunity to rest in the truth that God cares for us. He's the author of our days. And I love this part. Nothing comes our way that hasn't first gone through his hands. Isn't that just,
It
oh,
it's so good and it's also convicting, right?
it's
Like it's
convicting.
so convicting because like we're just like, okay, Lord, like just take this away. Like I don't want to do this. Get us through this or whatever.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's like needed. Like there's
Hmm.
something there that, some rough edge that needs to be like sloughed off, right? That we
Yep.
need to we don't like going through it.
No, but you're exactly right. Like it's typically there's something there that needs to be like refined or just worked on. And so anyway, it's a beautiful article. Her writing is always inspiring to me. She does such a great job. Um, but yeah, I particularly liked that one. So I guess if I
Yeah.
had to pick, those are the ones that I picked out of it. And I just think it's so interesting. This was so fun to go back and look at these because I only pull them out when I have like, as we're going through like editing processes
Right.
or maybe trying to plan for new articles or whatever, and we're like, wait, did we cover something sort of similar to this, or who wrote that or whatever, and I'll pull them out. But going through these, it's really fun to see just how far the magazines come, even just in a
Mhm.
year, just even like in design. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Did you notice that? I was like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, like this, everyone, and I, like you said, we say it every time, but everyone gets like better and better and just more and more fun. So
Mhm.
anyway.
And I know it's not just us because I put together a reel on Instagram the other day, just like kind of a recap of, just the year.
Hmm.
And someone actually commented on there, like, I know, like, all of the magazines are good, but they just keep getting better and better. And I was like, okay, thank you for saying that because,
Yay.
you know,
Yeah. Well, that's
um,
what we work towards. Like we find the things that, bothered us in one that we thought were going to be great, but then it comes in print and we're like, oh,
right,
I don't really think I like how that turned out or
right.
looked different on the screen or whatever, and you take it into the next one and
Hmm.
decide to do things differently. So anyway,
Right.
what
Okay,
were your
so
favorites?
my favorite from this issue, I think, was your article actually, Lessons Learned from Carol Ingalls. And
Yes.
I just think it's like, again, it's not about like how much you have for resources, right? It's just about doing the best, like just being a good steward of what like
Mhm.
God's given you. And so the tips in here that you have are just very like anybody can pretty much do these, right? Like
Mhm.
um using what you have, like decorating with what you have on hand. One of my favorite things to do is I don't remember where I got the term, but like shopping your own house, like
Mhm.
rearranging and then like taking a lamp from a different room and just like it costs no money, but then
Yep.
you have like this whole new look in your space. Um, so I thought that that was such a good tip. And Carolyn Ingalls, I mean, like if you guys have read the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, I mean, Carolyn Ingalls needs like I don't know, an Oscar or something, some kind of award for like I don't know, she was just such a trooper and they lived in like an underground, what do you call it? A dugout
Yeah.
for a while. And I mean, she was still sweeping the dirt floor and making it pretty and like,
Mhm.
you know, coloring her butter with carrot juice. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yes.
well done.
In all circumstances, right? Her husband
Right.
Charles was like such a visionary and a dreamer, and he was restless. Like he
Mhm.
just could not stay in one place. He was always There was always that thought of like what could be on, the other side or whatever. And I just sometimes I think about like living with somebody like that could
Yeah.
be really difficult, and I'm sure they had their tiffs or whatever that they're not going to write about in our beloved books. But um I just, yeah, she was a trooper. Like she just made the best out of every situation. I mean, and even like when they talk about the little what was the little like china
Yeah.
figure
It
that
was like
she
a little shepherd girl doll
Yes,
thing.
and it went up in every home that
Yeah.
they had. It was like they
How
knew
did
that
it
that
not
was like,
break?
I don't know. I
I
do
mean,
not know.
she must have packed that thing well. She
Yes.
probably wrapped it in like curtains and tablecloths or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Or like she took she made like what would you call them? Like those edging things on the shelf. She took paper and like made like a scallop and cut out little stars. Do you know what I'm talking
yes,
about with the
yes.
brown paper?
Yeah.
I mean, just learning to do a lot with a little. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I liked your article is because it's
Mm-hmm.
like you have flour and water and salt.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a loaf of bread for your family and it's just special and you can make
Yep.
them feel loved in that way. Um Again, like just pulling things from other rooms to like make a space look fresh and pretty. Um you have like growing your own food and preserving your own food. Now, like we can't all grow our own gardens, maybe, but I mean, there's probably ways that you can preserve food buying in bulk and then,
Mhm.
buying from a friend that has a garden or, oh, I don't know who does this, but like you can buy them at like, I don't know, some farmers markets and stuff where you buy like a big lug of peaches or whatever. And you can
Yep.
do that and like show your kids how you can things and preserve, peach jam or something for the whole year. So just like little things like that, that not
Mhm.
only are being resourceful, but you're also teaching your family that beauty is important and you're teaching your girls especially like, very good like homemaking skills and all the things. So I
Mhm.
don't know. I just thought it was such a rich, applicable article that you can really just use no matter who you are. So I
Yep.
loved that.
Yeah, that's good.
So, okay, let's move on to summer. Summer
Okay.
2023. Summer 2023 was fun because you came and visited. We had like this like power weekend retreat type of thing and it was so fun. We did a ton of planning and we also made a bunch of stuff for a Christmas issue that would come out later in the year. We were making like Christmas cookies in June, which
Mhm.
was crazy. Um, but for the summer, for summer, um, speaking of Laura Ingalls, we have our Laura Ingalls homestead on the cover of this one. And this one was about attentiveness. And
Mhm.
the scripture for this one was Philippians 2, 20 through 21. I have no one else like him who will show genuine concern for your welfare, for everyone looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. So, basically the story behind that scripture, to not take it out of context, but Paul was needing somebody to leave with probably the Philippians. I don't remember the entire epistle at the moment, but I mean, he needed somebody to like stay with this church that would actually be like caring for the people and like the
Mhm.
interests not of their own interests, um but focusing on like what does Jesus want me to be doing. And
Mhm.
so he was really looking for somebody and the particular person, he wanted to be very intentional about who he chose to stay. And so I loved this because this is how like we should be looking at our own families, right? To have the interest, not our own interest, but like the interest of Jesus towards our families and being attentive to those needs, not like our own things are not the priority, right? Like the
Mhm.
priority is to like, what does Jesus want? How does Jesus want me to be raising my family?
Mhm.
Um, so that was the point, is to be attentive to those things, right? So did you have a favorite from this one?
I did. Yes. My favorite in this one was the article An Invitation to Gather Creating Out of Door Spaces by Regina Gibson, who is just amazing. I always say, I just feel like nobody brings beauty to a space like Regina does. She is just so, so good at it. And I loved this is all about like basically how to make your outdoors beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I feel like a bit of a failure at most of the time. So I liked her ideas in here, but mostly I really loved how, I mean, when you look at her her pictures in this article, or even like if you follow her online, like her stuff is just she just has like this natural touch with things. It's everything is beautiful, and I'm sure she has her spaces that we all do that need help or whatever, but for the most part she just is very good at this. But what I love is that she's always so encouraging about how I feel like she makes it seem so simple to
Mm-hmm.
make something special, and it really is. Like her suggestions are like putting a pitcher of lemonade on the back table, and like a plate of muffins. Of course, that makes any space beautiful, and like
Right.
who can't do that? Like it doesn't have to be freshly squeezed. Dump the store-bought lemonade into a beautiful pitcher, and your muffins on a pretty plate. And like that makes it just makes something beautiful in a way that's like, that didn't take hours or tons of money or, I don't know. She just always has such great, simple advice on how to make something beautiful. And I
Mhm.
just really appreciate it about her. So I loved this one. I mean, the pictures are gorgeous and yeah.
I
So
love that. I love that. And
yeah.
I just thought of this too, like some of these back issues, most of these back issues are gone. Like there's none left for purchase or anything, but there are some summer issues left. I think we
Yeah.
had
I saw that.
I think we have had a snafu with the ordering, and
I think so.
I think I ordered over ordered. So there are summer issues to pick up in the shop if you want to do that. But
Yeah.
um there are so many good articles in this one. Um, there's house plants, which I think is great for being attentive because that I realized was my biggest issue with house plants that I just didn't pay attention. They all died. I was like, why did
Yeah.
they die? Oh, because I didn't ever water them or do anything. Um, I'm better now. I'm better now. I've gotten better in
You
my
are.
old
Yeah, you
age.
have
But
great plants.
um, the my favorite I think was three epic homeschool road trips. This was such a fun article, and it
Yeah.
was a fun one also to design. It was just a fun one.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those collaborative articles. And so Ashley Williams from Grace and Grit, she has basically it's like three itineraries for road trips to do with your family. So Ashley from Grace and Grit, she has itineraries to go visit several national parks. I think there's like three in there.
Yeah.
And then Nikki Truesdell has a really good, I mean, I used this when we went, a really good itinerary and tips to go to the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum in Kentucky, which was so good. Definitely you should go there with your families. And then I have a section in there on a Laura Ingalls Wilder road trip. And so that's really fun as well. So I love road trips. I think that they're so much fun. And
Hmm.
so definitely one of my favorite articles because there's just so many memories. And it's just, I also like appreciate just somebody planning out those details for me and like,
Hmm.
giving those tips, like I know Nikki has like one tip to go to the Creation Museum before you go to the Ark Encounter because the Creation Museum kind of lays out
Yeah.
everything that you'll see at the Ark. So like just little tips like that where it's like, oh, I'm maybe wouldn't have known that. Like I maybe would
Sure.
have done it
Yeah.
differently. So and then then we went and I'm like, oh yes, definitely this was the way to go. So I just so appreciate tips like that.
Hmm. Yeah. This one's laid out so well if you are planning to do any of these trips, which you should. They all look amazing. Yeah, the tips alone are worth this issue, I feel like.
Mhm.
Because I
So
know a lot of
helpful.
people that do all of these trips, to be quite honest. And yeah, the tips them just alone are wonderful.
Hmm.
And I mean, you can, I'm sure, spend time like researching all of this as well, but they're just all in this beautiful article. And yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah,
It was
that
fun to put together.
was a super fun one.
Yep.
So, okay, let's move on to fall.
Okay.
Fall, very enthusiastic about fall.
Yes.
That was the theme for the 2020 issue 8 um fall fall issue. It was all about enthusiasm, and the reason why was because we're going back to school and we want everybody to be enthusiastic and excited about teaching their kids and having another great homeschool year. So, First Peter 3:13 says, "Now who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is good?" Um again, this issue was just chock full of good stuff. Um book reviews, recipes, activities to do in the fall. Um
Mhm.
what was your favorite?
Yeah, my favorite, and I do think we talked about this one, at least if we didn't talk about it on here, I think you and I talked about it in length, but I love September's article on loving your homeschool space.
Oh yeah, that was a
This
good
one
one.
is it's just so good. She goes through like I mean, if you don't know September, who she is or her story, like she's basically been homeschooling forever. I don't know how many.
Truly.
It's taken. I feel like she's like in her what does it say? Oh, it says here her bio. She's been homeschooling for at the time of this 26 years, and
Oh my gosh.
she's currently like homeschooling some of her grandkids as well. But she just is like the ultimate veteran homeschooler, and she has had every space imaginable for a homeschool space.
Mhm.
And what I love about this is that she talks about the beauty in every single one. Um, which I just think is so important because in like our current time, especially with Instagram, there's just such a push with these accounts that are showing these beautiful spaces. And I'm not saying it's wrong to have a beautiful space. I mean, I aspire to have one maybe someday myself, but it's not like that's not what makes your homeschool.
Mhm.
And she did such a great job of going through like, I mean, I think went from like having this like basically this closet that they turned into kind of a homeschool space to homeschooling at their dining room table. She talks about a season where she was sick and she literally homeschooled from her bed, and how even that season, like she kept thinking, I hope my kids don't remember this, you know, because this is hard. Like, I hope this isn't what they remember. But actually, has been some of their favorite memories, and how, like, being able to do all of your work in mom's bed with her was just ended up being like a really bittersweet thing for them. And she just puts great perspective into what really matters, you know, and
Mhm.
what you're pouring into your kids, instead of like making sure that you have all the right things, all the right curriculum, all the right pretty books, the right watercolor supplies. I mean, not those none of those things are bad. You know, we have many of those things, we use them, we value them, but it's not ultimately what it's about. And I just feel like her words are just really powerful in this article. I really loved it.
Mhm. I just think that's just so true. And it's just something we all need to remember that, I mean, of course, we all want like something that's beautiful to look at. And again, it's like not necessarily like the size or, whatever to determine how beautiful it is, because you can make a closet beautiful, right? Like you
Sure.
can make
Yeah.
the tiniest room beautiful. So it's just something to keep in mind, right? Like that's what really matters, is that you're making memories with your kids, you're educating them, you're discipling them every single day. And it's
Yep.
just a good reminder to like just not get caught up in, we don't live in Instagram. We live in our
Yep.
homes. Like our
Yeah.
kids our kids are not, I mean, hopefully our kids are not on Instagram,
Right.
right? And so many times I feel like we put we project issues that aren't even really there. No one else
Mhm.
takes them as an issue but us, because
Yeah.
we're in this like world of Instagram where we're like, oh my gosh, like this is the next coolest thing and we don't have it.
Hmm.
Nobody else in our family even knows or cares. So
Yeah.
maybe we should like follow
Dial
their
it back a
lead,
little
right?
bit.
Like
Yeah.
with the bed, right? Like with the sixth season of being, homeschooling in the bed. Like it was her perspective that this is hard and I don't want them to remember this, but totally different from their
Hmm.
end of things. So
Right.
all good things to keep in mind. Mine is a little different. Mine is much
Okay.
more like frivolous and fun. Like, you know,
Yeah. No, it's
not
wonderful.
it's
I
unserious, but and this is my own article, which is like, is this tacky? It could be tacky, but
it's not.
um this article is on 3 ways to set your Thanksgiving table, which number one, I do think it's important to like set a pretty table for those that you love, but also the reason I picked it was because of like the memories that were tied to creating this spread. And I made, I mean, I had to make a turkey and sides and a pumpkin pie in May.
Yes.
And so it was just silly. And I mean, I had to like get all of this stuff from my storage room, like my fall stuff, and like
Hmm.
go to the grocery store and find flowers that kind of looked like fall. I mean, there's no fall flowers out in May, so I'm like trying
Right.
to like find colors that could work for fall, and it all worked out. But at one point, I mean, my house is literally destroyed. I had a table set up in the living room because I had like two different tables going on, like for different place settings. And it looked like a crazy person. I had a turkey, I had feathers everywhere, a pumpkin pie, and then of course someone comes to my door. This she's a friend. She was coming over to bring her daughter over to practice piano piece with my daughter because of course there's a million things going on, and there was a piano recital like the next day, and I'm doing Thanksgiving, and this friend of mine walks in with her daughter, and my house, I mean, it literally looked like, are you okay? Like, what? And it just, I'm like, oh, hello.
Just a
Welcome.
normal day over
He's like,
here.
oh, are you making dinner early? It's like 2. And I'm like, uh-huh. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
turkey. It's a turkey for, I don't know, just fun, I guess. It was fun. It was fun to create. It would have been more fun if you were here, and then at least I wouldn't have looked, you know, like I've totally lost it all by myself. I'd be like, "Hey, she's nuts too." But yeah, it was just fun. It was a fun thing to do. There's like 3 different place settings, um like themed place settings, and I hope that it helped somebody like be inspired to set a pretty table for their Thanksgiving, but it's the backstory that just there's some special things tied to that for
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Yeah, this is a beautiful article and I found it inspiring. I also have like serious envy over these plates.
Oh, yeah, those I found again with like the thrift shopping. They're
Ah,
not from a thrift store, but I found them on clearance. Actually, Jared found them on clearance. We were out like for dinner, and um we were going out for dinner in a mall, and we were killing time, and he was like,
mhm.
we were just walking around, and I was like, we're not going to buy, when you're like not in the
Yeah,
mood to shop, but then that's when you
right.
find like the fun things, and they were like
Yes.
75% off, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, we have to get
Like,
those.
yeah, we need these. Yeah.
Yes.
They're so pretty. I just like every time I look at them, I'm like, oh, those are gorgeous. They're
Yeah.
so
So,
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a fun article. I always like when we can kind of do something crazy like that for an article and like rearrange the house and
Hmm.
do something fun.
Yeah.
Like make Christmas
It's fun.
cookies in June.
Well, we got to eat them twice this year, so
That's true.
nobody's complaining.
Nobody is.
I'm not.
And nobody was complaining about the turkey. I mean, I'm sure my family was kind of like, okay, this is a mess, and no one could like move through the house, but we got, pumpkin pie and turkey for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, this job is kind of wild that way. There was at one point, I cannot remember which one it was for, but it was like almost 100 degrees here and
Oh
I was
gosh.
having to make corn chowder
Uh,
when Aaron walked into the house and he's like, why is it so hot in here? And the stove is on and there's like hot soup bubbling on the stove. And
yeah,
like nobody, honestly, I'll be honest, nobody wanted to eat it. It was just way
right.
too hot. We don't really do soup in the summer. I know some people like
We don't either.
will eat it like through the year, but we just don't. I just kind of put it on the back burner because I feel like nobody is interested. We
Mm-mm.
eat other hot foods, but soup takes a while to cool down. So it's just like you remain hot through
Mm-hmm.
the process of eating soup. So we put that on the back burner and it was, I mean, I made everybody eat it because we're not going to
It's
waste it, but we
right.
were, this is a kind of a wild job.
It is. I actually often forget not only like what month it is, but I'm like, what season is it?
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like it's not okay.
It is
Like, I'm like,
confusing.
wait, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah, because
what
we're in
month?
a current one. We're
Mm-hmm.
typically marketing one ahead and
Mm-hmm.
we're planning 2 ahead. Like we just planned for summer and I'm like, which one? And then trying to keep track of what we put in each one is just beyond difficult most
I
of the time.
know.
So,
I know. Which brings us to where we are right now, I think. Are we in winter? I think we still are. Winter 2023.
yes,
And this issue was all about peace, which I think is a good one for winter because it's like it
yes,
is kind of the peaceful, quiet season.
it
And
is.
so This one was based around Philippians 4:7, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus, which is a really good one to
Mhm.
memorize, I think. Um, and I feel like we just talked about this one
Yeah.
in one of like a recent issue or a recent episode of the podcast. And we are still like, we're going to be pulling a couple of more topics from this to kind of deep dive into further in the
Mhm.
next couple of issue or couple of episodes, or else at least the next one, I think.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say my favorite issue, or I can't keep the thing straight. My favorite article from this issue is our friend Christina Franco. She wrote about embracing teens in nature study.
Yes.
Um, and what is okay? The official title is Engaging Teens in Nature Study Through Books and Adventures. And I love this because she gives just such practical advice on just continuing to involve your teens, because I feel like, you know, if you don't have teenagers yet, like this is just something to like keep an eye out for, because as soon as I feel like my oldest was like, and I'm feeling it now with Vera, who's only 10, it's like
Mm.
you kind of like get this feeling that when a lot of homeschoolers start to get to junior high and high school, they start to, I don't know if it's a lack of confidence or if it's just like, no, we really need to get them more involved in like outside things, which I'm not saying outside things are bad. I'm just saying like it's a weird thing that I've encountered. Like there's this pull to when your kids, especially when they get to be teenagers, to send them out to like do college courses, you know, lots of co-ops, lots of outside activities, which I do think
Mhm.
that it's important for teenagers to have, you know, friends and outside activities too, and to not always be at home.
Mhm.
But for me, I want the bulk of their learning to be from me. And I don't want to just say, um, just because you're 16 and we're going to go for a nature walk, that
You don't have to
you
go.
don't have to go. And sometimes I
Yeah.
do think it is like, you know, sometimes it's like, well, I don't know. They just spent an hour and a half with us listening to swallows and Amazons. Maybe they
Mhm.
can sit this nature walk out. Fine. Okay. But like if you find yourself, repeatedly often excluding your teens from the rest
Mhm.
of the family, I think that that's like a detriment, because I think you're kind of missing out on some of the blessings that you could experience as a whole family. So that's what I
Yeah.
appreciate Christina's article, because she talks about that, like to keep engaging your teens through nature
Mhm.
study, books, activities, all the things, like keep them involved, because like they can offer such like great perspective too to the younger kids and help the younger kids. And it
Mhm.
also just like encourages that, sibling camaraderie. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I just really appreciate like just kind of that whole family learning aspect of
Mhm.
just, her insight and her advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and she really, if you do or don't, you should follow her. I think she has a YouTube channel as well, doesn't
She
she?
does. Yeah.
But on Instagram in particular, she really lives this out. Like I feel
Hmm.
like she definitely shows, keeping her teens engaged and having them be a part of the whole family learning, which I can imagine can be kind of difficult at times, but I feel like she does such a good job at it. So it's really encouraging and yeah, she's
Hmm.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you have any favorites from winter? I mean, I know we kind of just talked about this, but
Yes, I have so many favorites from this issue. This has been, I think, one of my favorites, and I'm just not even going to belabor the ones that we've already talked about. So I picked a different one. I picked the handmade Valentines.
oh, that was so fun.
Yes, this was
So
fun.
fun.
I just thought it was really fun. It was fun to make them and
Hmm.
to kind of come up with some ideas of just some fun but uh, easy, like really easy things that
Very
you can
easy.
do.
Hmm.
Um, and honestly, like I did not have to purchase one thing for this. I don't
I
know
don't
if
think
you
I did
did.
either. I don't think
Um,
I did either. And it's non-candy stuff too.
yep,
So if
yeah,
you're like, so sick of candy, like it's all just stuff you would
Yeah.
honestly, everybody would probably have most of that stuff in their
Yeah,
house.
I mean, we're talking paper and some thread and maybe some yarn scraps or felt
Hmm.
scraps. I mean, it's just if you have any kind of, crafting supplies at home, you can do at least one of these, if not all of them, in my opinion. So, but yeah, they were just super fun to make.
They were.
Made them with the kids. And I don't remember when we planned this one, but we definitely talk about like difficult as far as photographing. I remember we talked about this and you're like, I just want some conversation hearts for some photos for this spread. And of course you can't find them anywhere because it's
No,
nowhere near Valentine's Day. And so what did you end up paying, like $20 for a bag of them? Or did you just skip it all together? Because
I
I don't see
skipped
them.
it. No, I skipped it because it was just too expensive and
Yeah.
it was going to take like 6 days to ship them.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I guess it is like August. So maybe that's why, but still.
See, we're still getting used to like the whole or trying to think ahead. Like in the season that we're in, what might we want to do next year? Or I don't know, grab a bag
Mhm.
of conversation hearts and just shove them in your closet for
Yeah,
next year
they
so
last
that
forever anyway
they
because it's
do.
like 100% preservatives and like fake food. So it's
Exactly.
basically plastic. It'll be fine.
Exactly. It's
Uh,
so true.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was I mean, I don't know that I could pick a favorite in here. I really we've just talked about so many, I think, of the ones that we talk about on the podcast, I feel like are kind of our favorites. And
Hmm.
so we've already talked about a lot of them. But yeah, this issue just has so many good,
It's
so many good
packed.
articles. Yeah,
It's
it really
packed.
is.
And that one too, there are some back issues available for the winter issue if because that one is already mailed out.
Oh,
So
that's right.
yep. So that one is already mailed out. So if you're looking
Mhm.
to get your hands on a couple, we have some summer left over and we have some winter left over from 2023. Everything else is sold out, but you can still get your hands on those. And of course, you can subscribe to get the next one will be the spring one, which will ship out beginning of end of February,
The
beginning of
February.
March.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a
So
good one,
it's a
as
good
we've
one.
already said.
It is a good one.
It really
Um,
is, though.
So yeah, it was a great year and we're super excited to be back on the podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks. But before we go, we always end the show with doing some kind of currently, like what are we currently reading or watching or doing or making or something. And so
Mhm.
today we're sharing what we are currently reading and that's always a fun one. So what are you reading right now, Annie? Besides Learning Well Journal?
Besides that, I'm actually reading the first book in the Mark of the Lion series by Francine Rivers. I think it's called A Voice in the Wind. Am I correct
Hmm.
in that? I have been recommended this book by so many people, and I've only read one other Francine Rivers book. I liked it, and anyway, I'm well into this one, and I don't want to put it down.
It's
I
good,
just
isn't
am
it?
having a really hard time, like not. I want to, I'm making excuses to not do the things I need to do and to just sit and read for a while, but man, it's good. It's like all set in ancient Rome and the gladiator days. I was actually just telling when I was talking to Sophia, your daughter, the other day, I was telling her that it's crazy to me that it actually gives me so much comfort because I think about like our current culture and how there's just so many things where I'm like, this is like so depraved. Why? Like,
I know.
this is beyond anything, anything that we in our lives have seen, right? And then I think about the description that she's put into these gladiator games, and I'm like, but we're not like killing each other in an arena yet. I'm hoping that it
Yet.
doesn't get there, but like that's depraved. That's really
Right.
gross, and for entertainment and people are like cheering it on, like that's crazy.
Hmm.
So anyway, I guess it gives me comfort, which seems really weird, but I'm like, this is not like it just gives voice to that whole idea of like there's nothing new under the
No.
sun. Like we have been in worse times. Um, and it could and like likely will get worse too, but I don't know. It's just comforting to know that like God, he's present through all of
Hmm.
it. And um, so anyway, that's one that I'm reading. And then I just started reading with my kids, Created for Work by Bob Schultz, which
Hmm.
again, I've seen so many places. And I think you had told me, because I was like, should I just read this with Trip? And he's kind of young, he's 7, but is already, I felt like, showing signs of just like he wants to work. He is a hard worker. And so I thought, let's just read this together. And I think you had said like, oh, it's great for your girls too. So we're just reading it together and we're only a couple chapters in, but it's so good. It has created so many good
Conversations. Yeah,
conversations.
it
It's
is. It's so
great.
good.
Yeah.
He has a couple books too, but that's the only one that we've read of his. I
Okay.
think that Mary Prather kind of prompted me to read it several years ago because she was reading it to her son. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I've had that on my list or on my shelf for a long time. We have those like dust collecting
Mhm.
books that you're like, oh, when are we going to get to it? But we finally read it. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad. And we read it as like with all 4 of my kids. So it wasn't just, Noah was still in school. So
Right.
it was
Yeah.
good to all read it together. I'm glad that
Yeah.
The Voice in the Wind is good because sometimes, you read a book like I probably read that like 20 years ago when like
Mhm.
my kids were little and or my boys anyway, 18, 20 years ago. And sometimes like you're like, I did like it, but was it just that moment in time? Like would I think still it
Sure.
was good? So I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear that it
And like
is
you were
still
younger,
good.
so
Right. Like,
yeah, is
is it
it
actually
bad
really
writing?
cheesy?
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I just think it's a really good fiction story. And
Hmm.
actually, I have a friend who she is an aspiring author. I mean, she is a writer and she is
Cool.
an excellent writer. And she this is what prompted me to pick it up because it's been on my shelf for a very long time. And she like took a picture and posted it at I think they were on vacation. I don't know. It was like tropical. But anyway, she had that book and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this has been on my shelf for such a long time. You'll have to tell me what you think." And she's like, "This is like my 5th time reading this book. It's my
Yeah.
favorite book." And I was like, "Okay, well, you like I would totally trust your opinion because she is an excellent writer." And so I'm
Hmm.
like, "Okay, Allie, I'm gonna pick this up." And I mean, it did take me a couple chapters to get into because they start it like in the middle of a battle, which
Hmm.
I don't always like it's a hard place to start, I feel like. But um it didn't take that long
Oh,
to
right.
get
Because it's
to
going
it.
back and forth between Rome and
Yes.
the sacking of Jerusalem, right? And then
Yes.
also Germany or whatever
Mm-hmm.
they call it back then.
Yeah. I feel like they keep saying Germania or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah,
Okay,
it's
fun.
very good. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. So, and I have a friend at my church and she's read all of them, I think
Hmm.
twice. And I was telling her, I was like, Debbie, I started that book. And she's like, okay, as soon as you finish it, just send me a text and drive on over and get the second book because you're not going to want to
Oh,
wait. And so I'm like,
no, you're
okay.
not. You're not going to want to
Oh,
wait. No.
okay. No.
So,
And
like
I
waiting for
love,
it and to come in the library is like torture. It's like, no.
yes, yeah, which is what I have to do. And we are a black hole for any kind of delivery in the Black
Mhm.
Hills. And so it's just like sometimes our courier for the bookmobile delivers and sometimes they take a couple weeks off. So, you might wait a month for a book and I don't really enjoy purchasing books like that because I
I
don't
know.
typically read them twice. So, um anyway, yeah, it's a good one. I'm enjoying it. So,
Awesome.
what are you reading?
Okay, well, I am reading, I got to get the name right. It is Being Elizabeth Elliot by Ellen Vaughn. And I was kind of waiting for this to come out. She wrote one a couple years ago called Becoming Elizabeth Elliot. And that one was about like her um I don't know, kind of upbringing through the death of her husband Jim.
Mhm.
And then this newer one, Being Elizabeth Elliot, that one is like right after Jim is martyred, through
Mm,
I'm assuming her death. I'm in like the middle of it now. Um, it's okay. It's okay. I don't like to criticize like somebody's writing in public necessarily, but I just don't think like her writing is like very
mm,
great. Like there's just some sentences where I'm like, why did you write it like that? Just kind of,
mhm.
I don't know. Like for instance, Elizabeth Elliot felt like an idiot. I'm like, I don't know. I just think we could have written that. Could we
Yeah.
have done a better
Yeah.
job with that one? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
it's a lot of Elizabeth Elliot's journals, a lot of her letters back and forth with her parents and friends and things like that. which
Mhm.
is I always like to, if you can read directly from a source like that, that's I think a good way to like kind of study history. But
Mhm.
um there I don't know, there's just some uh I don't know. There's just some like maybe subtle things that I'm like, I don't know. It just seems like she's maybe projecting some things about Elizabeth Elliot that or maybe just more her opinion that
Mhm.
I feel like doesn't necessarily match with like everything else you've ever read about Elizabeth Elliot.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. It's fine. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I love this book. Like it's not a
Mhm.
voice in the wind for me.
Mhm.
But I am
Well,
finding
few
like
things are, so.
few things are, but I am like it's hard to put down because
Yeah.
I find like biographies, when you're reading a biography, they are hard to put down because like you're just, I don't know, it's like you're watching somebody's life. I mean, unless it's super dry and boring, but most of
Mhm.
the time I feel like with biographies, I'm just like turning the page, like, oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
what's happening next? And
Mhm.
um I know that she's gonna get married to her second husband soon. And so I'm like, wait. Oh, it's like
Yeah.
two things. It's I don't think it's great writing. And
Mhm.
I don't think she's blended together the diaries, the journals, the letters. I don't think she's because like it is kind of like a difficult thing because you're really quoting a lot of their work, their
Mhm.
writing, but then you're also kind of filling in the cracks with your own, just you have to have some context there and you know what I mean? And so
Right.
it just is not very smooth. I think it's probably not the easiest thing, but it's not very smooth. And I think a lot of her sentence structure is just kind of odd. And then
Mhm.
the second part of it, there's just some things I'm reading about Elizabeth Elliot that I'm like, I don't know. This seems kind of odd.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know how to reconcile that.
I
That's
know. I'm having a
kind of
hard time.
uncomfortable.
I'm uncomfortable. I'm very
Mhm.
uncomfortable. But I
Yeah.
do love reading biographies. I think biographies are really fun to read. And so
Mhm.
this year I always do like a reading my own like reading challenge. And so this year I have like a number of books I want to read, but I kind of broke it down into like I want to read this many classics, this many biographies, this many
Oh.
with the book club that I'm actually part of two book clubs right now.
Mhm.
Not very good member, but I'm trying. So I have like a certain number I'm going to read with them, and then like nonfiction, fiction. That's kind of how I broke it down, just to kind of
Oh,
a little bit more direction, I guess. Also to
good
kind of
for
keep me
you.
like keep me from just reading like lots of thrillers
Mhm.
and like
Yes.
whodunits and
Yeah.
maybe stretch my, I don't know, reading
That's
world a little bit.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. I think we've talked about this before. I don't like any rules for my reading.
Yeah.
And so I had a hard time even last like halfway through last year I decided to set a goal and I was like, I guess I could do that. I don't want to like fail at it, but then like I just don't ever want it to become something where I'm like, I don't want to read one more of this particular type of book. Like I'm over it, because it's just reading is like so enjoyable to me. And I typically don't have a hard time finding like a good balance of, I feel like I read a lot of all
You
kinds of
do.
things, but I can get stuck in a case. I know I told you as we follow each other on Goodreads, but in December, I basically read like 5 Hallmark Christmas books.
Yeah.
And I'm not upset about it.
That's
I
okay.
I wasn't I just felt like these are making me smile. They're fun. They're very festive. And so I enjoyed them. But, that's kind of all I read in December. And so, but the rest of the year, I had all these other great books. So, anyway, all that to say, I just have such a hard time like putting rules and regulations on my reading.
That's why I have a hard time with book club because I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm sorry. You want me to read the specific book that you said by a specific date?
Hmm.
This is like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm back in college. Like, I
I've done a book
can't
club
tell me what to do.
twice. Yeah, exactly. I've done a book club twice in my adult life, and I hated it both times. I really would like to be part of a book club that I enjoy, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. If it's just like, if I don't want to read the book, I do not want to be forced to. I also
Mhm.
don't like reading books that are like all the rage.
No,
Like that
never.
bothers me. And so I think I got to a point where I'm like, I don't know. I'll just like hang over here by myself and read.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I struggle
I'm proud.
because the book clubs that I'm part of, I just really like the ladies.
Yeah.
Like I just want to like
Yeah.
hang out with the gals. And so
Yep.
I'm like, oh, that's I guess a good way to do it.
I
So
guess I'll read this
I
book if
guess
it
I'll
means
read
I
this
get to
book for
hang
you guys.
out.
I will say though that there have been quite a few times where, in a book club, somebody has suggested a book and like then we're going with it. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be dumb. But
Mhm.
like I've been pleasantly surprised many times,
That's
like
good.
by, and sometimes they're a bomb too. It's like, oh, that really was bad. But
Mhm.
um, I think I just read one and it wasn't like my top favorite book ever, but it was called like Law's Orchestra or something like that. And it
Mm.
was like such a sweet book. It was about World War II. And I don't know if that's exactly the name. I can maybe put it in the show notes, but it's Law's Orchestra. I
Hmm.
know like that's in the title, but I feel like it's longer than that. And it's just this gal that she kind of finds herself living in the English countryside during World War II, and everybody's kind of doing what they can do. And so she starts raising chickens. And then
Oh.
her background is in music. And so she kind of gets this ragtag group of soldiers together to play an orchestra. Like there's this group of soldiers that just they all met and hung out because they all played instruments. And so um I don't
Cool.
know, it was just sweet. It was just sweet.
Yeah.
And like there's kind of like a love story to it and like there's some tragedy to it and it's just a very sweet story.
Hmm.
So I would have never picked it because I
Yeah.
like the title. I was like, this doesn't even sound good. But then
Hmm.
I was like, okay, they were right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. So anyway,
That's good.
so good to catch up. So good to
Yes.
meet with you guys here again and here on YouTube. I hope we'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
And on the podcast listeners, thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, subscribe. I always forget to say that, but do subscribe because it does just like help other people to see the podcast when more people subscribe and share
Mhm.
and all the things. And before we send you off, just remember no matter what's going on in your life right now, just to do the next right thing. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.